Hello class, I hope you're all having a great day today. My name is Bailey Burks and I'm going to be teaching you all about the research that my partner Hannah Mattinson and I did on the theorist Allan and the expectancy value theory. The expectancy value theory is defined as individuals' expectancies for success and the value that they have for succeeding are important determinants for the motivation to perform different achievement tasks. In other words, a student has to have both expectancy for success and a high value in the subject for them to feel motivated. If you have a student who has no interest in math but performs really well, they will not be motivated. Similarly, if a student is really interested in English but does not perform well, they will feel no motivation. Before we dig into all the details about the expectancy value theory, I want to tell you a little bit about the theorist Allan Winfield. He is currently a professor of educational psychology at the University of Maryland and has been teaching educational psychology since 1974. He received his bachelor, master's, and doctorate degrees from the University of Illinois, and he was named honorary professor in psychology at the University of Heidelberg in 2015. He's been a part of writing over 130 books and peer-reviewed articles and has been writing since 1976. Now, as a lot of names and theories have more than one name, the expectancy value theory does as well. The expectancy value theory is sometimes referred to as achievement motivation. To better explain why the expectancy value theory is also called this, let's put yourself in the shoes of a second grader. Imagine that you've been failing all of your spelling tests and that feeling of failure makes you feel miserable. You start to zone out during spelling instruction because you don't see a point, but one day you start to get frustrated by all of your friends getting A's on their spelling tests and homework. This frustration drives you to motivation and you start studying and paying attention to instruction, and naturally your grades start to improve. Motivation drives your second grader self into action, and that is what leads you to success. This theory becomes really helpful when you start to notice a student who just seems to not be engaging with what's going on. You may start to ask yourself, is my student interested? And they just aren't performing well, or on the opposite end, are they not interested and they have the potential to be performing really well, but they aren't because they aren't interested. There are several factors that could play into whatever is causing your student to not succeed. They could have preconceived opinions about the subject or about themselves. For example, if you have a student who has previously failed a subject in a previous year or just even on a test in your class, they may kind of label themselves as a failure, and from that point on, they're not going to put any effort in because they don't see the point. They could also have preconceived opinions about the subject. Class that this happens a lot with, which we'll mention a little bit later in this presentation, but government class, a lot of students, they may really hate the government, and so they just don't see a point in trying, and they don't want to be involved with it. They just want nothing to do with it, so they don't listen or do any of their homework or study for tests or anything. Something else that could affect this could be parental influence. Some of your students may have parents who either didn't go to high school or college, or just don't value education, and they're doing fine, and they may influence their children to believe the same as them, which would definitely affect their success in school. They may also not connect with you as a teacher, which I know we've all had that teacher where we're just kind of like, I don't like their class, I don't like them, so we need to try to make ourselves a teacher who is likable for everybody. They could also just not be interested in the subject. I know a lot of times there will be people who just really love math, so they don't see a point in English because they don't want to do English in their future career, so why bother during school? Now, how does the expectancy value theory relate to educational psychology? Well, it tells us a lot about how our brains work, and I say our because I'm not just talking about our students. This theory applies to everyone around you, including yourself. It deals a lot with metacognition, just kind of like the development of our brains and the timing of where we are. But it really says a lot about what our beliefs, how our beliefs influence us. The expectancy value theory shows us that as humans, our values and what we expect from certain situations directly affect our motivation. If you really want to get an A on a test and that's what you expect, then you're going to study really hard to make sure that you get that A. But on the opposite end, if you know there's no way you're going to get an A, and grades just aren't really all that important to you, you probably won't study as hard. Our beliefs about what is around us and our beliefs about ourselves majorly affect our motivation. On this slide, Hannah and I came up with 3 different scenarios where the expectancy value theory is shown. The first one is about a 4th grader named Sally. Sally has always really loved math, but she failed in the 4th grade, and so now she has a negative outlook on math as a whole. She just kind of expects herself to do badly, so that causes her to not want to try. And she also loses some value in the subject as well. Since she doesn't expect herself to do well, she fails her homework and tests regularly. Our second scenario is about a student, James. He loves his English teacher, Mrs. Smith. Mrs. Smith does a great job at making instruction engaging, and she's just kind, and she's a very entertaining and interactive teacher, so James really enjoys that about her. Because of the high value that James holds in her class, he has the highest grade in her class. And our third example, we've kind of talked a little bit about this already, is about government class. Maria's parents, they absolutely hate the government and everything about it. They just think politicians are liars, that the government does more harm than good. And they've kind of passed this belief on to Maria, and so now she has a really negative outlook on the government. And because of this, she puts no effort into her class and has no motivation for it. In any of these situations, you can apply it to a formula. The formula is expectancy for success times value is equal to motivation. If a student has no expectancy for success but has a lot of value in the subject, the equation would be 0 times 10 is equal to 0. If a student has a lot of expectancy for success but no value, the equation would be 10 times 0 is equal to 0. Both result in no motivation. A student has to have both expectancy for success and value to have motivation. A practical way to apply this theory to your classroom would be to engage students through creative activities that cater to every learning style. We need to make sure that we aren't catering to just students who learn well in group work or just students who learn well learning individually. We need to make sure that we're creating activities that are engaging for everyone in our classroom. And there's also a lot of research going on that will be really beneficial to our classrooms in the future. They're doing some research on how this theory can help students with behavior problems and mental health issues as well. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you found this helpful and interesting.